Morning everyone. Today is February 13. It's a day before Valentine's Day, but still we will be lecturing because of course it's a regular class, no? Also, I'd like to greet everyone a happy Chinese New Year, Kong Hei Fat Choi, no? To everyone. So we begin today's lecture by continuing our discussion on the Bill of Rights. No, we stopped the last time in section 6 of Article 3, which has something to do with, of course, about uh, the liberty of abode, no, the liberty of abode and of changing your residence anywhere you want to in the Philippines. When we speak of abode, we are talking of your residence, no, your place of residence, and you have every right as a Filipino citizen to change, to choose and change your place of residence or abode, and no one can restrain you from, say for instance, establishing your residence or address elsewhere in the Philippines, anywhere in the Philippines, as long as uh, as long as it is within the jurisdiction of our country. This section is not so much important for section 6, but we move on to the next section, which is section 7, and this one might interest you because this is a recognition of your right to know any information or any data that may have uh, something to do with official concern. No, so section 7 states that, no, the right of the people to information on matters of public concern. And what are these? Of course, anything, no, anything that is official in nature, no. The government in the discharge of its duties and responsibilities as the machinery that should protect and that should see to it that the welfare of the people is aligned to its goals and objectives. Of course, the citizenry, no, every citizen has also every right on official matters. No, now if you ask if the health of the president is also one of the information that every citizen should know, well, it also falls under this section because definitely the health of the president is a matter of public concern because being the chief executive of our country, definitely he has to discharge his duties and responsibilities according to the will of the people, and the people should have the right to know his fitness at any given point in time. No, but more so for Section 7, the projects that are being implemented by the government, because this involves the discharge or the disbursement of funds, no, and these funds definitely come from the citizenry. So the disbursement of funds should have something to do with official matters, no. These are official matters that every citizen should also have the right to know. Why is that? Well, because the money or the funds belonging to the government came from the taxes that the people pay. No? So even the salaries that the government employees receive also come from the taxes that the government collects. Now, you know very well that taxes are the lifeblood of the government. No? When we say lifeblood, no? So under section 7, very important are the projects, no? The implementation of certain projects, no? Implementation of projects, especially if these projects have something to do with social services, no? Social services. Now, the projects, in order that the government could fund these projects, of course, the funds would come from taxes, no? The taxes that we pay as part of this country. Now, As I told you earlier, these taxes are actually what? The lifeblood of the government. The lifeblood of the government. Now, when we talk of taxes being the lifeblood of the government, meaning to say that when we say that taxes are considered to be the lifeblood of the government, this means that the government machinery as a whole cannot function without funds, and these funds come from taxes. So even the salaries of the government employees, of all government employees, come from the taxes that the government collects. So definitely, because we are a part in the payment, or we contribute something, the payment of taxes, so we have every right to know that the funds that we the money that we pay to the government in the form of taxes should be allocated honestly and transparently. No, that means that every single centavo that is spent for these projects, and even in the payment of the salaries of government personnel, should be spent according to the specifications set forth in the national budget. Okay, so that's section 7. Now, it is also stated therein that even official matters or transactions or decisions, as well as government research data, shall be part of what we call matters of official concern. So, if you see, say for instance, in the government, uh, there are postings by the Civil Service Commission as to the vacancies that are available for anyone who may want to enter government, and that is also a matter of official concern. These are just examples that I'm citing to you, which are covered under Section 7. Now we proceed with Section 8. The right of the people, including those employed in the public and private sector, to form unions, no? Unions, associations, or societies for purposes of what? For purposes of, say, for instance, of forming the same, no? A legal organization, or a what we call a labor organization, shall not be abridged. Now, abridged, the meaning of abridged is shall not be restrained or shall not be shortened. Shortened is not appropriate in this case, but shall not be restrained. No, so section 8. What can the people form? Um, we as citizens can form unions, associations, and other organizations. In other words, shall not be abridged. When we talk of abridged, we are talking about shall not be restrained or shall not be shortened. So the question here is that in as much as we mention about unions, because it says people both in the public and private sector. No, there is no problem when we are talking about employees in the private sector. No, but the problem now is with regard to this. How about employees in the government? Can they form unions? Well, the answer there is for purposes of forming a union, yes, they can. But if you ask if they can also strike, the problem there is their jobs are impressed with public character or public interest, so they cannot no strike unless of course that or in cases where certain sectors or certain offices in the government will strike in case, no, if they will strike, then the government, represented by the chief executive or the president, will have the right to interfere or intervene so that public services or public interest will not be affected. Okay? So I repeat, unions, no, associations, and other organizations or societies, no, unions, associations, and other organizations or societies may be formed by people both in the public and private sector. Now, uh, there is no problem with regard to the private sector because they have the right to strike. That's another story. No, the right to strike is different from the right to form. No, so there are two aspects here. The right to form, no problem with regard to the public and private sector, but the right to strike, in case of government employees, they cannot just do that because their jobs or their occupations are impressed with public character. Okay? But for those who are employed in the private sector, yes, they can. Okay, next would be Section 9. Private property shall not be taken for public use without just compensation. Okay? Private. We are talking of private property. No? Private. These are rights of every citizen. No? Private property. No? If you have a piece of land, for instance, private property shall not be taken, shall not, no, it's in the negative, shall not be taken for public use, no? It will be used by the government, say for instance, or by the public. Shall not be taken for public use. What? Without, no? The word without what we call just compensation, no? And this one, the appropriate term in legal parlance is what we call the this one. If the government takes your property for public use, it's called expropriation. That is what we call the expropriation. No, example. No, classic example of this is if you have a piece of land. Say for instance, you have your house. No, and in front of that house, of your house, is the national road, for instance, or a main road, not just like here in, say for instance, in Giku Street, no, in our house there. If the government now would like to enlarge or broaden, no, broaden the street, the main road, and a part of your property, a part of your property will be affected. Of course, that is already private property, right? If a part of that property will be taken by the government for public use because they want to broaden or they would like to enlarge that road, of course, they cannot just take that unless you are paid with what we call just compensation. No? Just compensation would mean that they have to compute, no, the reasonable value of the property that they will take, and they cannot just take that away from you because that's private property without being paid properly and reasonably, and that is what we call just compensation. Okay, and the entire process, as I told you, is called expropriation. No, they will expropriate your property because they would like to use it for public purpose. Okay, now for section 10, it says here, no law impairing the obligation of contracts shall be passed. No, no law impairing the obligation of contracts shall be passed. No? Uh, which agency passes again or enacts laws? It's the legislative branch of the government. No? The one that enacts laws, it's the legislative. No? The one who makes laws is the legislative branch of government, right? This is just a review. And the legislative branch, of course, we have two chambers, no? I told you already. The upper chamber, which we call the Senate, no? And the lower chamber is what we call the House of Representatives. No? This is where we have the congressmen, no? The House of Representatives, the congressmen, and here we have the senators. No? So here, the legislative branch of government would be composed of the lower chamber and the upper chamber. Usually, laws that are passed, no, the laws, RAs. What are RAs again? The public acts would emanate from here. No? Dito muna, manggagaling yung ginagawang batas. No? They have to deliberate on the bills. We call that the bills. No? Before it becomes an RA, it has to pass as a bill. No? So once they have deliberated here already, then the bill will go up to Senate. So it says there, under that section, it says that no law impairing the obligation of contracts. No? Remember that a contract is an agreement. No? It's the same. When we talk of a contract, it's the same as what we call an agreement. No? So for instance, I entered into a loan agreement. No? By the way, before we proceed to that example, an agreement or a contract is considered the law between the parties. No, it's not actually a law, but whatever stipulations that are contained in the agreement shall be considered as the law between the parties. And any stipulation contained therein, these parties are bound. You understand? Now, example wherein the government cannot just pass any law that will impair, no, impair meaning that will affect your obligation in that agreement. For instance, I entered into a contract of loan. No, I entered into a contract of loan. Say for instance with what bank? Metro Bank, for instance. No, I entered into a contract of loan with Metro Bank with a, say for instance, an interest of about, say for instance, 5%, no, per annum, no, per annum, no? 5% interest per annum would be annual, no, per annum. So this is the interest that is contained in the contract that I entered into with Metro Bank. Now here comes a law, no, a law passed by Congress. Here comes a new law, no, say for instance, a new law was passed, say for instance, RA, say for instance, 100. Now in this new law, and this is just an example, no, in this new law, for instance, RA 100, it says that uh, for contracts of loan, no, so we are affected. For contracts of loan, the interest that should be imposed uh, by the what's this? The one who loans, no, by that person. So the interest shall not be less than, or shall not be okay. The new law would say that the interest should not be less than 7%. No? Pag pinasa ng Kongreso, that the new law, this one, RA 100, would say that the interest now for all contracts of loan should not be below 7%. No? But earlier, I have entered into an agreement with Metrobank that the interest should only be 5%. Now, the new law, if you will notice, this one is more onerous or burdensome. No? Onerous or burdensome, and that will already affect the agreement that I have entered into with Metrobank. So, because this is a new law, this will not apply to me anymore because there has already been an earlier agreement, no, with Metrobank. Aside from that, it's more onerous. I told you it's more burdensome, and it will affect my obligation as a borrower. Okay, so that will not be impaired. That will not affect anymore the contract of loan that I have entered into with Metrobank. Okay, you understand? Now, section 11 would be free access to the courts and quasi-judicial bodies shall and adequate legal assistance shall not be denied to any person. No? So it says here, um, free access to the courts. No, when we talk of the courts, these are the courts of law, no, that we're talking about. Under section 11, the free access to courts. Free access to courts. No, free access to courts. Well, of course, when we talk of the courts, these are the judicial courts. No, yung korte, judicial courts, wherein there is a full-blown trial and hearing for issues or controversies that are referred to those courts, and what we call the quasi-judicial bodies. No? So that particular section, section 11, would say that the people can always have free access, not the courts or the quasi-judicial bodies, or if you want, because you are just a pauper litigant, of course, legal assistance shall not be denied to any citizen. No? Legal assistance shall not be denied to any citizen who would request one. No? And this legal assistance, if you do not have money, this one is covered by what we call the PAO, the Public Assistance Office. Now, if you do not have money to get a lawyer, you can just go to the PAO, local office. The PAO would stand for Public Assistance Office, and you will not be denied with this legal assistance. Kung wala kang pera, you go to PAO. Now, courts are clear to you, no? These are the judicial courts, no? But the quasi-judicial bodies here that I'm talking about, they are not actually courts, no? But they are like courts, functioning like a court, no? Quasi-judicial would mean that semi, no? Semi-judicial. Yung quasi na word would mean semi. Semi-judicial bodies. Examples would be what? The NLRC. No, if you have a labor case, you go to the NLRC, National Labor Relations Commission, or the another example of an office that is considered as a quasi-judicial body is the Bureau of Immigration and Deportation. That is also a quasi-judicial body. They are not actually courts, but they function like a courts. No, may kulang lang doon. Ano yung kulang? Kaya nga semi-judicial body or semi-judicial bodies. The one that is lacking there for them, they are not actually judicial courts. The one that is lacking for them is the rules of procedure. No, they are not bound by the formal rules of procedure. No, hindi sila kagaya ng korte wherein the presentation of evidence and the litigation would have to go through a formal process. No, but in the case of quasi-judicial body, they are not like that. No, anyone can just present the evidence, although there is also the hearing officer there. They are like courts, but they fall short like a court. Okay? And that one, you can also have free access to any body, whether courts or quasi-judicial body. And if you need the assistance of the POW, you may also go there. Okay, so that is section 11. Ilang oras na?
25, sir.
Ah,
25.
okay. Tama na. So I think this is all for today. We stop on section 11, then we proceed next time, uh, starting with section 12. No, section 12. So we continue until we finish section 22. Your assignment, I will just put it in our group chat. No, your assignment in NSTP 2, I will just put it down through our GC. Okay? Good morning, everyone, and thank you.